Welcome to Coco Tales Reddit, where the deepest secrets find a voice. Have you ever had that little whisper in your heart? That tiny, nagging feeling that something isn't quite right? It's a feeling we often push down, telling ourselves we're just being silly or insecure. But sometimes, that whisper is a warning, a quiet alarm trying to save us from a storm we don't yet see coming. This story is about what happens when that storm finally hits, and you're left standing in the wreckage, wondering how you missed the signs. My name is Jake. I'm 31, and until last Friday, I thought my life was pretty much on track. I have a stable job in logistics, and for the last 16 months, I've been dating Tessa. She's 28, smart, ambitious, and has a good office job downtown. She was, I thought, the complete package. Things between us weren't just casual, they were serious. We were at that 16-month mark where the future starts to feel real and tangible. We'd been talking about moving in together, looking at apartments online, and debating whose couch had better vibes. I'd met her parents, she'd met mine, and we were even planning a trip to meet each other's extended families over the holidays. It felt like we were building something solid, a life. Our Fridays were sacred. It was our date night, a simple tradition to decompress from the week. We always went to this sports bar, O'Malley's, right near her office. It was convenient for her, and it had become our spot. Nothing fancy, just a couple of drinks, some decent bar food, and a chance to actually talk and reconnect. Last Friday was no different. I left work, feeling that familiar sense of weekend relief, looking forward to seeing her. I got to O'Malley's around 6:30 p.m., just like we planned. I remember she'd even texted me earlier in the afternoon, a little message that said, "Can't wait to see you, babe." Reading that now feels like a punch to the gut. I pulled into the parking lot, found a spot, and started walking toward the entrance. It was a cool evening, the city lights just starting to flicker on, and that's when I saw it. Something that just stopped me dead in my tracks, my brain short-circuiting. There, in the designated smoking area just outside the bar's entrance, was Tessa. But she wasn't just having a smoke. She was pressed up against some guy in a suit, and they were making out. And I don't mean a quick, drunken peck. This was a full-blown, passionate, hands all over each other makeout session, like two teenagers who couldn't wait another second. I was maybe 20 feet away, just frozen, staring. My mind couldn't compute the scene. It was a complete system failure. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was cheating, happening right there, in our spot, on our date night. I started walking toward them, but it felt like I was moving through water. Every step was heavy, my heart pounding a sick rhythm against my ribs. I was trying to process it, trying to find an explanation that wasn't the obvious, soul-crushing one. As I got closer, the guy turned his head slightly, and my stomach dropped even further. I recognized him. It was Brad, a guy from her office. She'd mentioned him plenty of times. He was always so funny, the one she worked late on projects with. All those innocent little mentions suddenly felt like clues I'd been too trusting to see. It all made a horrible kind of sense. I was about 10 feet from them when Tessa's eyes fluttered open and she saw me. I braced myself for the look of guilt, of panic, of shame. But I didn't get any of that. Her face went completely, terrifyingly cold. Her expression wasn't one of a woman caught doing something wrong. It was the look of someone who was annoyed that I had interrupted her. "Tessa," I managed to say, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. "What the hell is this?" She pushed Brad away gently and took a step towards me, her posture instantly defensive. "What are you doing here?" she asked, as if I were the one out of line. I just stared at her, baffled. It's Friday night. It's our date night, remember? I told you I was working late tonight, she said, her voice sharp. A lie. A blatant, easily disproven lie. No, you didn't, I said, shaking my head. You texted me this afternoon to meet you here at 6:30, like always. Throughout this, Brad just stood there, shifting his weight, looking like a cornered animal trying to decide if he should bolt. Tessa, however, doubled down. Look, Jake, this isn't what it looks like. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Really? Because it looks exactly like you're cheating on me with your coworker. That's when her annoyance morphed into pure rage. Her face twisted. You're being ridiculous, she spat. Brad and I are just friends. Friends? Who make out in parking lots? I shot back, my own anger starting to burn through the shock. We weren't making out. We were just talking, she insisted, her voice getting louder. The gaslighting was so immediate, so absolute. It was breathtaking. I was watching the woman I loved, the woman I was planning a future with, lie directly to my face about something I had literally just witnessed with my own 2 eyes. She was trying to convince me that my reality was wrong. You're seeing things? She said, her voice dripping with condescension. You're being paranoid and controlling. And in that moment, I realized the woman I thought I knew was a complete stranger. To be called paranoid and controlling by the person you love, at the very moment you catch them betraying you, is a special kind of psychological warfare. It's designed to make you question your own sanity, to throw you so far off balance that you can't even trust what's right in front of you. But the image of her and Brad was burned into my retinas. It was real. Tessa, I'm not blind, I said, my voice dangerously calm. The shock was starting to wear off, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I saw what I saw. I saw you. Your tongues were in each other's mouths. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The simple, graphic truth of that sentence seemed to hang in the air between us. For a split second, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Maybe it was panic. Maybe she realized that her gaslighting wasn't going to work. But whatever it was, it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by a terrifying resolve. That's when she snapped. She drew her hand back, and before I could even process the movement, she slapped me, hard, across the face. The sound was shocking, a sharp, ugly crack that seemed to echo off the brick walls of the buildings around us. The sting on my cheek was instant, but it was nothing compared to the deep, shattering blow to my soul. My girlfriend, the woman I loved, had just hit me. But the slap wasn't the end. It was the beginning of her performance. Before the ringing in my ears even subsided, her face crumpled, not in regret, but in a theatrical mask of fear. She took a step back and screamed, a full-throated, blood-curdling scream loud enough for half the street to hear. "Stop harassing me!" Heads turned. The little crowd of smokers outside the bar, who had been trying to mind their own business, were now staring directly at us. Their faces were a mixture of surprise and concern, their eyes locking onto me. In the space of 5 seconds, I had gone from the wronged boyfriend to the public aggressor. "I told you to leave me alone!" she shrieked, her voice cracking with fake hysteria. She was now playing to the audience, transforming herself into the terrified victim of a crazy stalker who just wouldn't take no for an answer. She was painting a masterpiece of deception, and I was the villain in her frame. "Get away from me!" she cried out, taking another shaky step back towards the bar's entrance. "Someone, please help!" A crowd started to form. It's amazing how quickly people are drawn to drama, like moths to a flame. The heavy-set bouncer from O'Malley's came pushing through the door, his face set in a grim, no-nonsense expression. He scanned the scene, A woman screaming, pointing at a man. He made an immediate, and I suppose understandable, assumption. I was the problem. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice a low growl directed squarely at me. Before I could even form a sentence, Tessa seized the opportunity, her voice now a quivering, tearful plea. "This psycho won't leave me alone," she sobbed, pointing a trembling finger at me. Then came the lie that sealed my fate. I broke up with him, and he's been following me around. He won't stop. I watched in horror as Brad, the coworker, who had been silent this whole time, gave a solemn, confirming nod to the bouncer. He was backing her up. They were in this together. The crowd was now staring at me with open hostility, their eyes full of judgment. I was no longer a person to them. I was a predator. "Sir, you need to leave," the bouncer said, taking a step toward me. "That's not true," I pleaded, my voice sounding weak and desperate even to my own ears. "This is my girlfriend. We had dinner plans tonight. She was just making out with this guy." The bouncer was unmoved. "She says you two broke up and you're bothering her." My mind raced, searching for proof, for anything to cut through her web of lies. "Check her phone," I said, a last desperate gambit. "We've been texting all week about meeting here tonight. The proof is right there." "Sir, I'm not checking anyone's phone," he said flatly, his patience clearly gone. "The lady wants you to leave, so you need to go. Now." Tessa delivered the final, crushing blow, with tears streaming down her face. Looking small and fragile, she turned to the bouncer. "Please," she whispered, her voice choked with manufactured fear. "He's scaring me." The crowd ate it up. I looked around at all these strangers, at their faces filled with contempt for me and sympathy for her. They had no idea. They were watching a play and had mistaken it for reality. I felt a wave of nausea. There was nothing I could do. Arguing would only make me look more like the psycho she claimed I was. "Fine," I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "I'm leaving." I turned my back on her, on Brad, on the bouncer, and on the crowd of strangers who now saw me as a monster. I walked back to my car, feeling the weight of their stares on me every single step of the way. I didn't run. I didn't make a scene. I just left with whatever tiny shred of dignity I had left. The drive home was a blur. My cheek throbbed, but my heart was in pieces. My girlfriend of 16 months had just cheated on me, slapped me in public, and then orchestrated a breathtakingly cruel performance to convince a crowd of strangers that I was harassing her. The sheer level of calculation, the chilling, manipulative genius of it all, was staggering. I had just seen the real Tessa, and she was terrifying. I finally made it inside my apartment, the sound of the door clicking shut behind me, feeling like the lock on a prison cell. The silence was deafening after the chaos of the last hour. Outside, I was a villain, a psycho, a stalker. In here, I was just a man whose world had been ripped apart in the space of a few minutes. I walked straight to the kitchen, my movements stiff and robotic. I poured a whiskey, my hand shaking so badly that the neck of the bottle rattled against the rim of the glass. I didn't bother with ice. I needed the raw, immediate burn. I needed a different kind of pain to focus on. I sank onto my couch, the whiskey scorching a path down my throat. The scene kept replaying in my head on a torturous loop. The kiss, her cold eyes, the slap, the scream. The faces in the crowd, twisted with judgment. It's a terrifying thing, isn't it? To have someone you trust completely rewrite your reality in front of an audience. She didn't just cheat on me. She publicly erased me, erased our relationship, and painted me as a monster to save her own skin. She had called me paranoid and controlling. It's the classic playbook. When you have no defense for your actions, you attack the other person's sanity. You make them the problem. And watching her do it so effortlessly, so skillfully, was the most horrifying part of it all. This wasn't a panicked mistake. This was a practiced art. How many other times had she manipulated a situation to get what she wanted? As I sat there, stewing in the toxic mix of grief and fury, my mind snagged on one concrete detail from her web of lies. Her claim that she had told me she was working late. My hand trembled as I reached for my phone, my thumb swiping through the screen to our text thread. My heart was pounding. What if I was wrong? What if I had missed it? But there it was, in black and white, a digital ghost of a future that would never happen. Her text, sent at 3 p.m. See you at O'Malley's at 6:30. My reply, sent at 3:15 p.m. Yep, see you there. And then, the one that felt like a knife twisting in my gut, sent from her at 4 p.m. Can't wait to see you, babe. So much for her story. There it was, the lie exposed. Seeing those words, our normal, loving conversation from only a few hours ago, broke something in me. The heartbreak was still there, a massive, gaping wound. But something else was starting to seep in around the edges, cold, methodical rage. I took a screenshot of the conversation. Click. The sound was so small, so insignificant, but it felt like loading the first bullet into a magazine. I went back to the kitchen and poured another whiskey. This one wasn't for the pain. This one was for focus. My mind started working. What do you do when someone tries to destroy your reputation with lies? You don't argue. You don't scream. You fight back with the one thing they can't manipulate, the undeniable truth. And that's when I started thinking about Tessa, really thinking about her. See, the thing about Tessa is that she is deeply, almost pathologically concerned with her image. She's built this entire persona around being a respectable, career-focused professional. Her social media was a carefully curated highlight reel of networking events, professional achievements, and a polished, trustworthy image. She'd spent years building this reputation as someone serious, someone you could count on. Her public image wasn't just a part of her life. It was her life's work. It was her armor. And I suddenly realized I knew exactly where the weak points were. It would be a real shame if that armor got damaged. The rest of my weekend was a blur, but not of grief. I had a new project. I channeled every ounce of my pain and anger into a single, focused task. Gathering materials. I became an archaeologist of our relationship, digging up proof of her deception. I compiled everything. The screenshots of our texts from that day, proving we had plans. I went through my camera roll, finding photos of us from the last few months at a friend's barbecue, on a weekend hike, just goofing around on the couch. I made sure to save them with the timestamps clearly visible. Then, I moved on to the main event, her own social media. I scrolled through months of her posts, screenshotting every time she called me her boyfriend, every couple selfie she'd posted with a gushing caption, every comment where she talked about our future. She had documented our entire relationship for her audience, and I was now collecting it as evidence for the prosecution. By Sunday night, my work was done. I had a folder on my desktop filled with a complete, undeniable timeline that proved two things beyond any shadow of a doubt. We were very much together, and she had very much lied. I wasn't the psycho stalker. I was the devoted boyfriend who had been publicly betrayed and humiliated. And I had the receipts to prove it. She wanted to play victim in a public drama. Fine. I was about to give everyone a front row seat to see what really happened. Monday morning arrived with a gray, determined light. The weekend of simmering anger and meticulous planning was over. I sat at my desk, my coffee untouched, staring at the folder on my screen simply labeled evidence. There was no more grief, no more shock. There was only a cold, sharp-edged resolve. She had drawn the battle lines in public, and I was done being a conscientious objector. I opened a new social media post. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. This couldn't be an emotional, angry rant. An unhinged tirade would only prove her right, casting me as the psycho she'd described. No, this had to be precise, clinical. It had to be an undeniable presentation of facts. My strategy wasn't to scream louder than her. It was to dismantle her lies piece by piece with the quiet, devastating weight of the truth. I started with a simple, direct headline. Friday night, reality check. Then, I wrote a short, clear introduction that set the stage without melodrama. When someone cheats on you and then plays the victim, the truth needs to come out. Here's what really happened at O'Malley's. It was a simple statement of intent, promising clarity, not chaos. Then, I attached the evidence. I uploaded the screenshots of our text conversation, with her loving messages and our concrete plans for that night, clear as day. I attached a few recent photos of us together, smiling, happy, with the timestamps visible proof that her claim of us being broken up was a complete fabrication. Finally, I wrote a detailed, step-by-step account of what I witnessed. I described seeing her with Brad, the kiss, the confrontation, the slap, and her theatrical performance for the crowd. I didn't use inflammatory language. I didn't call her names or speculate on her motives. I just laid out the sequence of events, plain and simple. No lies, no exaggeration, just the facts with the evidence to back them up. With the post crafted, it was time for deployment. I set the visibility to public and clicked post. But I didn't stop there. I shared the post in several local social media groups, community forums, neighborhood pages, and, most importantly, a few professional networking groups for our city where I knew her colleagues, and even her bosses would likely see it. It was a direct, strategic strike at the foundation of her carefully crafted professional image. For the final touch, I sent the direct link to a few mutual friends who I knew had been at the bar that night. I didn't pressure them. I just wrote, "You were there. If you feel comfortable, I'd appreciate you sharing your perspective on what you witnessed." I was inviting third-party verification, confident in what they had seen. Then, I put my phone down and waited. It didn't take long. Within an hour, my phone, which had been painfully silent all weekend, started blowing up. Notifications poured in. Likes, shares, comments, and private messages. It was happening. The truth was out there, and it was spreading like wildfire. It's a strange feeling, unleashing something like that into the world. You're taking a private pain and making it public, which feels counterintuitive. But Tessa had already made it public. She'd weaponized public perception against me. All I was doing was correcting the record. I wasn't seeking revenge as much as I was seeking justice. I was taking back the narrative she had tried so desperately to steal. That afternoon, I got the first real confirmation that my plan was working. A call from my buddy, Ryan, who works in a similar industry to Tessa and knows a lot of the same people. "Dude," he said, his voice a mix of shock and awe. "Your post. It's everywhere. It is making the rounds in the professional community. Everyone is talking about it." "Good," I said, a grim satisfaction settling over me. "Tessa called in sick to work today," he continued. "The rumor is she's too embarrassed to show her face." My only thought was cold and simple. Actions have consequences. But then Ryan gave me the piece of information that truly confirmed I'd done the right thing. "Get this," he said. Some of her own co-workers are commenting on your post, backing you up. My heart leaped. Apparently, this Brad guy has a reputation for this kind of thing. He's a known homewrecker. It was the ultimate validation. Her own colleagues were confirming the story. This wasn't just my word against hers anymore. The cracks in her facade were showing, and her own world was helping to tear it down. The social media bomb hadn't just landed, it had triggered a chain reaction. And I knew, with chilling certainty, that this was only the beginning of the fallout. If Monday was the explosion, the rest of the week was dealing with the radioactive fallout. The validation from Tessa's own co-workers was a balm on my wounded pride. But I knew she wouldn't just disappear quietly. People like Tessa, whose entire identities are built on a fragile, carefully constructed public image, don't accept defeat. They go into damage control. The first attempt came on Tuesday, via a phone call from her friend, Amy. "Jake, you need to take down that social media post," she said, her voice strained with forced pleasantry. There was no hello, no how are you, just a demand. "Why would I do that, Amy?" I asked calmly, leaning back in my office chair. "You're ruining Tessa's reputation over a misunderstanding," she insisted. A misunderstanding. The audacity left me breathless. "A misunderstanding?" I repeated, my voice hardening. "I caught her cheating on me, Amy. She slapped me and then convinced a whole crowd of people I was a stalker. Which part of that was the misunderstanding?" Amy sighed, as if I were the one being difficult. She was drunk and confused, she offered, a classic flimsy excuse. "She didn't mean to hurt you." She was sober enough to coordinate a story with Brad. I countered, my patience wearing thin. She was sober enough to put on an Oscar-worthy performance and have security throw me out. Don't tell me she was confused. That's when the real reason for the call slipped out. "Jake, please," Amy pleaded, her voice losing its composure. "She's getting scrutinized at work. Her boss is asking questions about all this public drama." Ah, there it was. It wasn't about my feelings or a misunderstanding. It was about her career. Maybe she should have thought about that before she created public drama to cover up her cheating, I said flatly. Amy tried to guilt me for another 10 minutes, calling me vindictive, but I just tuned her out. I wasn't being vindictive. I was just being honest. Wednesday brought the next wave. A social media message from the man himself. "Brad. Jake, this is Brad from Friday night. We need to talk," the message read. "Nothing to discuss," I typed back instantly. His reply was quick. "You're causing problems for both of us at work. This needs to stop." The nerve of this guy. He was worried about his job. "Should have thought about that before you made out with my girlfriend in public," I wrote, the words tasting like victory. "He tried to pass the buck, of course. Tessa told me you two were having problems and were basically broken up." "Tessa lied to you," I replied. "Check the screenshots in my post if you don't believe me." I wasn't going to let him play the victim either. He was a willing participant. His final message was a weak plea about his own reputation. My one-word reply was all he deserved. Good. He asked to meet to work this out. I told him no, and to enjoy the consequences. Thursday, however, brought my favorite development. The tide of public opinion turned into a tidal wave. People who were actually at O'Malley's that night, total strangers, started commenting on my post. "I was there, saw the whole thing." One comment read, "This guy is telling the truth." Another followed, "Witnessed the slap and the fake screaming. She was 100% putting on an act." And another, "Brad and the girl were definitely making out, no question about it." Reading those comments felt like taking my first deep breath after nearly drowning. The eyewitness accounts completely obliterated any shred of credibility Tessa had left. It was over. Her story was dead. And that's when she finally cracked. Friday evening, exactly 1 week later, I was making dinner when a frantic, desperate pounding started at my apartment door. I looked through the peephole, and my heart jumped into my throat. It was Tessa, looking like a ghost. Her hair was a mess. Her face was blotchy and swollen from crying, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Jake, please open the door," she cried, her voice muffled through the wood. "I need to talk to you." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just turned up the volume on my television. "Jake, I'm sorry," she wailed, her pleas growing more desperate. "I made a terrible mistake. Please let me explain." She kept pounding for what felt like an eternity before finally giving up. An hour later, she was back. But this time she was just sobbing, loudly enough for the whole hallway to hear. Then, through her sobs, came the truth. "Jake, I'm begging you," she cried out. "I'm on administrative leave at work. They're investigating the situation because of your post." Now we're getting somewhere, I thought, a cold satisfaction spreading through me. "My reputation is destroyed," she sobbed. "Everyone in my industry has seen what happened." I wanted to yell through the door. "Because you earned that reputation." Her final plea was the most pathetic of all. "Please, I'll do anything to fix this. I love you." I picked up my phone, ordered a pizza, and let her cry in the hallway. She finally gave up and left around 10 p.m., her footsteps echoing down the hall. But as the silence returned to my apartment, I had a sinking feeling. This still wasn't over. The week after Tessa's breakdown at my door was quiet, but it was a heavy, loaded silence. I knew she was desperate, and desperate people make desperate moves. Her dramatic, tear-soaked performance in the hallway was just Act 1 of her final, pathetic attempts to claw back some control. On Saturday, a bouquet of overpriced flowers was left for me at my building's front desk. The card was short. "I'm sorry. I made the biggest mistake of my life. Please give me one chance to explain." I read the first line and tossed the entire bouquet, card and all, into the dumpster on my way out. Her gestures were as empty as her apologies. On Sunday, my phone rang. It was her sister, Kelly. We'd always gotten along well, so against my better judgment, I answered. "Jake, Tessa is devastated," she began, her voice full of genuine concern. "She knows she messed up, but she thinks the public humiliation seems harsh." "Kelly," I said, trying to keep my voice even, "I appreciate you calling, but she didn't just cheat. She slapped me and then convinced a crowd of strangers that I was a stalker who was harassing her. That isn't a simple mistake." "I know, but she was panicked," Kelly tried, repeating the same tired excuse. "She made bad choices." "No," I corrected her. "She was calculated and manipulative. There's a huge difference. Panic is screaming for help. Strategy is inventing a story about a breakup and having your accomplice back you up." I could hear Kelly sigh on the other end. She knew I was right. In a surprising moment of honesty, she conceded. "Jake, I love my sister, but what she did to you was horrible," she said quietly. "You didn't deserve any of it." But then, loyalty kicked back in. "She's learned her lesson, though, hasn't she?" "Has she?" I asked. "Because she still hasn't actually apologized for what she did. She's only sorry she got caught and that her career is in jeopardy." The conversation ended shortly after that. Monday brought the most satisfying update of all, courtesy of my friend Ryan. "Dude, you are not going to believe this," he said when I picked up. "Brad's been moved to a different team at his company. or had to get involved because of all the attention your post brought. What about Tessa? I asked, holding my breath. She's still on leave while they figure out what to do, he said. The company doesn't want to be associated with the drama, so she's basically in professional limbo. Then he dropped the final bomb. And word is getting around that this wasn't their first time hooking up. People are saying it's been going on for months. Months. The word hit me like a physical blow. For months, while we were talking about moving in together, meeting families, building a future, she had been carrying on with him. The betrayal was so much deeper than I had ever imagined. Her final attempt came that Friday. I came home from work to find her waiting for me in the lobby. She'd somehow convinced the building manager to let her wait inside, claiming she needed to return my belongings. She looked terrible. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair unwashed, and there were dark, hollow circles under her eyes. "Jake, please just hear me out," she began, her voice raspy. "You need to leave," I said, not breaking my stride toward the elevator. "I've lost everything," she pleaded, following me. "My job, my friends, my reputation, all because of one stupid mistake." I stopped and turned to face her, my voice devoid of any emotion. "You lost everything because you cheated for months, lied about it, and then tried to destroy my reputation when you got caught. The punishment doesn't fit the crime," she whimpered. "The consequences fit the actions," I retorted. "You made your choices. Now you live with them." Her eyes filled with tears. "Jake, I love you more than I have ever loved anyone," she whispered. "My feelings for you are real." I almost laughed. "Your feelings are guilt and desperation, Tessa. That's not love. If you loved me, you wouldn't have been hooking up with Brad for months. If you loved me, you wouldn't have slapped me and tried to convince the world I was a monster just to cover your tracks." "I was scared. I panicked," she cried. "You were calculated," I said, my voice like ice. "You turned an entire crowd against me to protect yourself. That's not panic, that's strategy." She started crying again, but I was done caring about her tears. When she offered therapy and counseling, I cut her off. "There's nothing to save," I said, pressing the elevator button. "We're done. You made sure of that when you chose deception over honesty." As the elevator doors opened, I gave her one last piece of advice. "Build a new life. Based on honesty this time. Maybe you'll have better luck." She followed me to the elevator, still pleading, and I finally had enough. "If you don't leave this building right now, I'm calling the police." The threat finally landed. She froze, the last bit of fight draining from her face, and left. That was a week ago, and I haven't heard from her since. Her social media went completely dark. My revenge was never about being elaborate. It was about being strategic. I used the simple, undeniable truth to let her own lies crush her. And now, my apartment is peaceful. Work is good. And I've started talking to a woman named Emma, someone who actually seems to value honesty and loyalty. Tessa wanted to have her cake and eat it too. Instead, she lost everything. This whole experience has been a whirlwind, a painful and messy lesson in trust and deception. It forced me to look at the dark side of a person I thought I loved, and to find a strength in myself I didn't know I had. Standing up for myself wasn't about seeking revenge in a traditional sense. It was about refusing to be a silent victim in a narrative someone else created. I chose to reclaim the truth, not just for my own sake, but because allowing a lie that toxic to exist felt like a disservice to my own reality. But it brings up so many complicated questions, doesn't it? When someone betrays you and then tries to destroy your character to cover it up, where is the line? At what point does defending yourself become vindictiveness? My actions had severe consequences for Tessa's career and reputation. Was that justice? Or was it going too far? I exposed her lies with her own words and actions, but the court of public opinion can be a brutal and unforgiving place. Did she deserve the professional fallout for her personal choices? And what about the people around us? Her friends who tried to intervene? Her sister who was caught in the middle? Even Brad, who was a willing participant but also fed lies? It's easy to see things in black and white, but real life is so much messier, filled with shades of gray. I wonder if fighting fire with fire, even when the fire is the truth, is always the right path. It brought me peace and validation, but it also caused a lot of destruction. Maybe the most important question is how we move on from a betrayal that profound. How do you learn to trust again when someone you shared your life with proves to be a complete stranger? I'm talking to someone new now, and she's wonderful. But there's a small, scared part of me that's always watching, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. The scars from Tessa's manipulation run deep. Ultimately, she built her world on a foundation of lies, and it crumbled under the slightest pressure. Perhaps the only real lesson is that the truth, no matter how long you hide it, always comes out. And it is always more powerful than the most carefully constructed lie. If this story made you feel understood, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Cocoa Table Reddit. Every follow and comment gives me the motivation to keep sharing these real, emotional stories with you. And if you have a story of your own, feel free to share it in the comments. I'm always here to listen. Now, let's see what you all have to say about this one in the comments below.